and pleasant good evening to all. A few weeks ago, the Freeport News carried a front page headline which read, "Gender Equality Issue Confusing to Electorate." That headline caused me to pause and reflect on the likely consequence of the parents of a young boy dressing him in a skirt, putting ribbons in his hair, and calling him by the name Mary. The boy begins to grow and reaches puberty. His voice begins to change. He begins to grow a mustache and beard. But his parents continue to dress him in a skirt, put ribbons in his hair, and call him by the name Mary. Should it be surprising to anyone if the behavior of the boy's parents creates confusion, not only in the mind of the boy, but also in the mind of the general public? And isn't that exactly what is happening in the debate on the subject of the upcoming referendum? I ask you to read carefully each of the 4 bills on which we are being asked to vote on the 7th of June 2016. You will find that 3 of the 4 bills deal with the subject of citizenship, and the 4th bill deals with the subject of discrimination based on sex. But the promoters of these 4 bills insist on referring to them as bills dealing with the subject of gender equality for Bahamians. They insist on calling these 4 bills by a name which they are not. They insist on calling them by a name which tells a lie. Should it therefore be surprising to anyone that the voting public has become confused? And so tonight, I do not intend to speak to you on the subject of gender equality. I do not intend to speak to you on a subject which tells a lie. I shall speak to you briefly on the 3 bills which concern the subject of citizenship and how these 3 bills will affect the right to claim citizenship in our country should these 3 bills become law. I do not intend to speak to you on the likely impact of Bill number 4. I am fully satisfied that Dame Sawyer and Mr. Maurice Clinton, Queen's Counsel, will address you fully on the likely impact of Bill number 4, and I will simply adopt in advance what they will say to you tonight. So, on the subject of Bahamian citizenship, I wish to make 3 general points or observations. The first point is that Bahamian citizenship confers on every person who holds the status, a status which does have value. Bahamian citizenship is not to be treated as one of the cheap gimmicks freely given away by BTC and Island Luck during the recent Junkanoo Carnival parties held at Tynes Beach here in Grand Bahama and at Clifford Park over in Nassau. Bahamian citizenship confers on every person who holds the status the important and unrestricted right and privilege to enter and leave our country. No one can stop you at the border. To engage in gainful employment without restriction. To own land and build a home. But even more importantly, the right to vote in elections and help choose the government of our country. It confers the right to run for political office and become a member of Parliament, that body that makes the laws that govern us. Confers the right to hold the office of Prime Minister, to hold the office of Governor General or Head of State in our land, the personal representative of Her Majesty the Queen. And the time has now come, my friends, for all of us as Bahamians to recognize that these rights and privileges are of the greatest value in our country and should be guarded jealously by every loyal and right-thinking Bahamian. The second point I wish to make on the subject of Bahamian citizenship is that it seems to me only right and proper that Bahamian citizenship should come automatically to every child whose mother or father is a citizen of our country. After all, a child born to a Bahamian woman or a Bahamian man is born with Bahamian blood in his veins. The courts cannot grant that child a divorce from his Bahamian blood or a judicial separation from his Bahamian blood. And no minister of the government, however exalted or powerful he may think he is, can make an executive determination that the child's Bahamian blood was acquired as a matter of convenience. As they say, the child born to a Bahamian woman or Bahamian man has Bahamian blood in his veins from the cradle to the grave. On the other hand, Bahamian citizenship should only be granted to a foreign person where there is evidence that that foreign person has a sense of loyalty and allegiance to our country and to the institutions of our government. In addition, a foreign person who seeks to become a citizen of our country should be required to speak our language. He should be required to know our country's motto and our national symbols. He should be required to know our national anthem and should show a sense of pride in being Bahamian wherever else he may choose to go in the world. In short, a foreign person who seeks the status of Bahamian citizenship should show a sense of loyalty and allegiance to our country. I maintain that only where there is a sense or an evidence of loyalty and allegiance to our country should a foreign person be given all the rights and privileges of citizenship in our country, bearing in mind, as I indicated before, that those rights and privileges include the right to vote and choose the government, the right to run for political office and become a member of Parliament, the right to hold the office of Prime Minister, the right to hold the office of Governor General, the right to be head of state or personal representative of the Queen. Now, the third point I wish to make on the subject of Bahamian citizenship is that Article 13, which was recently just read by my learned friend, Ms. MacDonald, Article 13 of our Constitution gives to the Parliament of our country the power by itself to make laws to provide for the grant of Bahamian citizenship without the need for a referendum. There is simply no need for our country to be put to the cost and expense, as well as to the confusing and divisive debate which we are engaged in regarding Bills 1, 2, and 3. Having said that, what do the three bills on citizenship seek to do? And I go immediately to Bill number 1. This bill would give to all children born outside the Bahamas to a Bahamian woman the immediate right to citizenship in our country. At present, if a Bahamian woman is unmarried and she gives birth to a child outside the Bahamas, that child would become a citizen of the Bahamas at the moment of its birth. On the other hand, if a Bahamian woman is married to a foreign man and she gives birth to a child outside the Bahamas, that child would not become a citizen of the Bahamas at the moment of its birth. So Bill number 1 sets about to change that, to give to children born outside the Bahamas to Bahamian women the immediate right to citizenship of the Bahamas at the time, to all Bahamian women at the time of its birth. Now, the first observation I wish to make is that this bill has nothing at all to do with gender equality. It seeks to correct an inequality which presently exists between children born abroad to a Bahamian woman who is unmarried and children born abroad to a Bahamian woman who is married to a foreign man. So clearly, Bill number 1 has absolutely nothing to do with a difference in gender. And it is a lie for anyone to tell you otherwise. My criticism of Bill number 1 is that should this bill become law, it would only benefit those children who are born after Bill number 1 becomes law. That is, children born after the 7th of June 2016 outside the Bahamas to Bahamian women married to foreign men. That would be the basic change it would make. Bill number 1 would not benefit, however, those children who are already in existence and are the essence of the problem we are seeking to fix. Those children who have already been born to a Bahamian woman, married to a foreign man, and that birth take place outside the Bahamas. It would only benefit those children who are yet unborn. And so, while Bill number 1 is being sold to us as a people, as part of a package intended to end discrimination in our country, it would in fact introduce discrimination in that it would benefit those children who are yet unborn, but it would not benefit those children who are already here with us and have the same qualifications as those yet unborn. I go to Bill number 3. This bill would enable a child born out of wedlock to acquire Bahamian citizenship if his natural father is a citizen of the Bahamas. It would not matter if the child is born within the Bahamas or in some distant corner of the world. And for the purpose of establishing the paternity of the child, a DNA test could be relied upon to establish the identity of the father. Now, my first concern about Bill number 3 is that we do live in an age of test tube babies and sperm donation. I am told by scientists and medical people who are knowledgeable on the subject that it would be possible through the process of sperm donation for a single Bahamian man, for one Bahamian man, to enable thousands of children with no real connection whatsoever to this country to qualify for citizenship by tracing their paternity to that of that one Bahamian man. I ask you to consider the possibilities of 100 or maybe even 1,000 Bahamian men reared on a diet of conch. Enabling hundreds of thousands of persons with no real connection to this country qualifying for citizenship in our country. Well, there's a further concern I do have about Bill number 3. And it has to do with the reliance on DNA tests to establish the paternity of a child. I recognize that scientific tests conducted in the most controlled conditions in a laboratory can be fraudulently manipulated to produce a desired result. And the story is often told, I have told it on many occasions, of a male worker who was required to submit to a urine test to determine whether he was drug-free. He had been seen to be behaving strangely on his job. In order to ensure that he did not fail that test, the male worker secretly took a sample of urine from his wife to the lab to be tested by the scientists who were there. The following day, the male worker got the results, which showed that indeed he was drug-free, but that he was also 3 months pregnant. The very serious point I seek to make is that by fraudulent manipulation of scientific tests, unqualified persons, undeserving persons would be able to qualify for citizenship in our country. And this therefore brings me to Bill number 2. If Bill number 2 should become law, then a foreign man or a foreign woman who marries a Bahamian citizen would have a right, based on the marriage, to call upon the government of the Bahamas to register him or her as a citizen of our country. I immediately ask the question, what is the argument for giving to a foreigner married to a Bahamian citizen the constitutional right to become a citizen of our country, to to give to a foreign person based on marriage alone the right to vote and choose the government, the right to run for political office, the right to become Prime Minister or Governor General in our country. I begin at the beginning. In the case of an adult foreigner who marries a Bahamian citizen, we start from the position that that foreign person does not have Bahamian blood in his veins to begin with. And we should never ever forget that if the foreign man or woman comes to us at the point of marriage, he is likely to be coming to us as an adult citizen of a foreign country who has spent his earlier life cultivating a sense of loyalty and allegiance to his foreign country, cultivating a sense of pride in the motto, the symbols, the national anthem of his foreign country. And while the foreign spouse may join a Bahamian family through marriage, in terms of the most important ingredients of Bahamian citizenship, loyalty and allegiance to the Bahamas, that foreign person is not really one of us. Well, the story began in 1972, when a number of men got together in London and wrote the Constitution which now governs us as a people. In dealing with the subject of citizenship in our country, these men agreed to insert a provision known as Article 10, which gives to a foreign woman the right to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas upon becoming married to a Bahamian man. There is at present no provision in our Constitution which gives to a foreign man a right to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas upon becoming married to a Bahamian woman. That doesn't matter if the foreign woman is unable to speak a word of English. It does not matter if she does not know our country's motto or the words of our national anthem. It doesn't matter if she does not know the difference between the Bahamian flag and the Russian flag. It simply doesn't matter if she spends her entire day bar talking our country and telling her friends how much better it is outside the Bahamas. Once that foreign woman becomes married to a man who is a citizen of the Bahamas, she has a right to call upon the government to register her as a citizen with all the rights and privileges of citizenship, including the right to vote and choose the government, including the right to run for political office, and even the right to become Prime Minister. And in the upcoming referendum, we are being asked to expand the provisions of Article 10 of the Constitution so that a foreign man who marries a Bahamian woman would also have the right to call on the government of our country to register him as a citizen of the Bahamas. I have heard supporters of this proposal to change our Constitution or to refer to it as an attempt to bring about gender equality and to bring to an end gender discrimination. I have chosen to refer to this proposal as pure madness. I say Article 10 should never have been placed in our Constitution in 1972 to give to a foreign woman a right to become a citizen of our country based on her marriage to a Bahamian man. It is a provision in our Constitution which ought to be removed, and the people of the Bahamas ought to be given an opportunity to vote to remove it. Let me say that I firmly believe in my heart that a foreign man or a foreign woman who marries a Bahamian citizen becomes a member of a Bahamian family through that marriage. And as a member of a Bahamian family, the foreign spouse ought to be embraced by all of us and treated by our laws as a member of a Bahamian family. I hope I don't embarrass a friend of mine I saw when I was coming in, one Grafton Eiffel Senior. I had occasion to speak to some people in Ilustra over the last 24 hours, and I told them that the only Bahamian I know of to beating a man named Usain Bolt in a foot race and bring great pride to this country is a young man now working on Wall Street because he abandoned sprinting, a young man named Grafton Eiffel III. Grafton, I hope, as my brother in Ascension Church, you're not embarrassed by me calling your name. But I firmly believe that a foreign man, foreign woman, or any foreign person who shows sense of allegiance and loyalty to the country, as did Eiffel Sr. show from the 50s going on, when he made sure that the streets of New Providence, as a police officer, was safe for Bahamians to live in, putting his own life at risk, and he made sure that Bahamians in New Providence were safe in their homes. He showed dedication to duty, loyalty and allegiance to this country. As a Bahamian family, as a member of a Bahamian family, that foreign spouse, or even if he is not a foreign spouse, because my argument is citizenship must not be based on marriage. It must be based on a demonstration of loyalty and allegiance. But the foreign spouse should have every right to enter and leave the Bahamas without restriction. He should have the right to reside here, to own land, to raise his family, and seek gainful employment to provide financial support for his family. That is not to say that the foreign spouse, on the basis of marriage, ought to receive all the rights and privileges associated with citizenship in our country. We should recognize that the choice of rights and privileges to be given to a foreign spouse is not simply a choice between full citizenship or nothing. There are some rights and privileges of citizenship which should only be given to a foreign spouse after a show of loyalty and allegiance to our country. But until there is evidence that the foreign spouse has a sense of loyalty and allegiance to our country, I maintain that he or she should not be given all rights of citizenship. I say it was wrong to place Article 10 in our Constitution in 1972. But instead of trying to correct the wrong which was done some 43 years ago, we as a people are now being asked in this referendum to compound the wrong by extending to a foreign man a right which should never have been given to a foreign woman in the first place. We should recognize that to the extent that Article 10 created gender discrimination some 43 years ago, that discrimination is not between a Bahamian man and a Bahamian woman. It is between a foreign woman who has the right to citizenship based on her marriage and the foreign man who does not have the right to citizenship based on his marriage to a Bahamian woman. They are both foreigners. And so my question is, why change the Constitution of our country to end gender discrimination between two foreigners? And what is worse, for the purpose of giving to a foreign man a right which should never have been given to a foreign woman in the first place. I suggest, my friends, that if we must be hell-bent on bringing an end to gender discrimination between two foreigners by a constitutional amendment, then it makes better sense for the government of this country to abandon Bill number 2 altogether and initiate legislation to remove Article 10 from the Constitution of our country. Now, I wish to make maybe two further points regarding what I consider the evils of Bill number 2. In recent weeks, you may have seen an advertisement on ZNS television which tells us that these 4 bills would allow a Bahamian to pass his citizenship on to family members. But what that advertisement does not tell us is, if Bill number 2 should become law, it would also allow a foreigner to pass Bahamian citizenship on to another foreigner. I ask you to take the time and look carefully at what Bill number 2 says. It does provide that any man or woman who marries a person who is or becomes a citizen of the Bahamas shall be entitled upon making application to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas. This means that a foreign man or woman will have a right to become a citizen of the Bahamas if that foreign man or woman marries a person who belongs to either one of 2 categories: a person who is a citizen of the Bahamas or a person who becomes a citizen of the Bahamas. So how would a foreigner be able to pass Bahamian citizenship on to another foreigner? Should Bill number 2 become law? Fairly simple. Raul Batista, a citizen of Cuba, marries Jane, who is a citizen of the Bahamas, and a member of the first class of persons who may pass Bahamian citizenship on to another foreigner. Upon marriage, Raul immediately qualifies to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas. And upon registration as a Bahamian citizen, Raul becomes a citizen of the Bahamas and joins a second class of persons who may pass Bahamian citizenship on to a foreigner. So Raul and Jane are soon divorced, and Raul sends for and marries his childhood sweetheart, Griselda Blanco, from Cuba. Griselda is now entitled to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas on the basis of her marriage to Raul. And upon registration, Griselda becomes a citizen of the Bahamas. So both Raul and Griselda are now members of the second class of persons who may pass Bahamian citizenship on to a foreigner. In this way, a single member of the second class, Raul, may increase the number of persons who become citizens to 2. Then those 2, through divorce and remarriage, to 4. And those 4 to 8 and 16 and so on. And each of them will be able to pass Bahamian citizenship on to a foreigner. By this means, friends, a country with a small population such as the Bahamas could find its citizens outnumbered in no time by foreign persons who do not have the most important ingredients of Bahamian citizenship, loyalty and allegiance to this country. I therefore ask the simple question, should we, as Bahamians, take a reckless gamble and make Bill number 2 a part of our law and thereby run the risk of becoming a minority people in our own country by enabling foreigners to pass Bahamian citizenship on to other foreigners? I make one final point regarding Bill number 2 before I sit. Please, I urge you, read it carefully. It provides that any man or woman who marries a person who is or becomes a citizen of the Bahamas shall be entitled upon making application to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas. Any man or woman who marries a person who is or becomes. This bill does not require that a man should marry a woman in order to qualify for citizenship. The bill does not require that a woman should marry a man in order to qualify for citizenship. The bill does not require that the marriage must be solemnized within the Bahamas or in accordance with the laws of the Bahamas. It only requires that a man or woman should marry a person who is a citizen of the Bahamas in order to qualify for citizenship. I therefore ask you, friends, to consider the following purely hypothetical situation. Maybe purely imaginary situation. Dr. Coxon, an American man, marries Dr. Algernon Cargill, a Bahamian man, in accordance with the laws of the state of New York. Following the wedding in New York, Dr. Coxon arrives in the Bahamas and presents an application to the minister responsible for nationality. The basis of his application, I am now married to a person who is a citizen of the Bahamas. I ask you a very simple question. Assuming that Bill number 2 becomes law, on what basis would the minister be able to deny Dr. Coxon the right to be registered as a citizen in our country? I end by expressing grave concern that in recent weeks, the debate on a subject of the greatest national importance has become a contest between who can shout the loudest, a yes vote group or a no vote group. My greater fear, however, is that should these bills become law, we may wake up on the morning of the 8th of June or sometime soon thereafter to the realization that we have made a mistake, and it may then be too late for us to correct our error, because the balance of voting power in our country would have shifted away from us by the loose granting of Bahamian citizenship in our country.